The alarm tore through the chamber before Daniel Harper even finished reading the final line on the screen. Red light washed over the walls of the Terran embassy. Around him, aides were already grabbing files, shouting into comm units, and staring at him as if he could somehow undo what had just happened. Earth had been banished from the Galactic Council. Daniel stood frozen for a moment, his hand still resting on the podium where, only minutes earlier, he had argued for humanity's right to remain a member. He had spoken about cooperation, about growth, about the mistakes any young species makes while learning to walk among the stars. None of it mattered. The vote had already been decided long before he opened his mouth. Grace Whitfield, his second in command, rushed to his side. Her face was pale, her voice tight with disbelief.
"They can't do this! Not over one border dispute!"
"They just did," Daniel said quietly. Through the tall viewport behind them, the massive rotating structure of the council chamber turned slowly against the black of space, its lights blinking in calm indifference to the chaos it had just caused. Delegates from a dozen species were already leaving, their ships peeling away from the docking rings like animals abandoning a sinking vessel. Daniel's communicator buzzed. It was a priority message from Earth, marked urgent, sent directly from the Unified Terran Authority's command center. He opened it, and the voice of Commander Peter Ashford filled the room, sharp and controlled despite the tension underneath it. "Ambassador Harper, we've received the Council's ruling. All Terran fleets are ordered to withdraw from Council space within one solar cycle. I need you back on Earth immediately." This isn't just a diplomatic loss. This changes everything. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, steadying himself. One solar cycle. Not even a full year to bring home every ship, every outpost, every citizen scattered across a dozen systems that Earth had spent decades building relationships in. "Understood," he said. "I'm leaving now." As he walked through the corridors of the embassy for the last time, other delegates watched him pass. Some looked away, embarrassed. Others didn't bother hiding their satisfaction. A tall, silver-skinned delegate from the Voss Assembly, one of the oldest and most powerful species on the Council, stood near the exit with his arms folded. "You should have listened when we warned you to slow down," the Voss delegate said, his voice smooth and cold. "Your kind moves too fast, reaches too far, and breaks too many things. This was inevitable." Daniel stopped and looked at him. "We came here in peace. We tried to learn your ways, and you punished us the moment we became inconvenient." The delegate said nothing more. He simply turned and walked away, his silence more insulting than any answer could have been. Grace caught up to Daniel as they boarded the transport that would take them back to the waiting ship in orbit. "What happens now?" she asked. "Without Council trade rights, without protection, without access to their technology exchanges, we're cut off, completely." Daniel stared out at the stars sliding past the window. "Now we go home. And we figure out what kind of species we're going to be when nobody else is watching." The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. Daniel spent most of it reading reports, replaying the Council's final arguments in his mind, searching for the moment things could have gone differently. There wasn't one. The decision had been made long before the vote, shaped by fear of how quickly humanity had grown, how boldly its ships had pushed into new territory, how many old alliances it had quietly begun to threaten simply by existing. When the ship finally entered Earth's orbit, Daniel expected to see the usual calm blue and green world turning peacefully below. Instead, he saw lights, thousands of them, clustered around continents that had once been divided by borders and old rivalries. Something had changed while he was away. Peter Ashford met him personally at the landing platform, along with a woman Daniel didn't recognize, dressed in a plain gray uniform with sharp, intelligent eyes. "Ambassador Harper," Peter said, extending a hand. "Welcome home. Things have moved fast since the ruling came through." "I can see that," Daniel said, glancing at the woman beside him. "This is Dr. Olivia Marsh," Peter said, "lead physicist for what's now being called the Continuance Project. You'll want to hear what she has to say." Olivia stepped forward, her expression calm but determined. "Ambassador, the Council thinks banishing Earth means containing us, limiting our growth, keeping us small and dependent on trade routes we no longer have access to." She paused. "But they've made a mistake. They've given us a reason to stop asking for permission." Daniel frowned. What are you talking about? Peter answered instead. Every nation on Earth has agreed, for the first time in our history, to unite under a single authority. No more competing space programs. No more divided militaries. No more rival corporations racing each other into the void. We are one now. The unified Terran authority speaks for the whole planet. Daniel felt a strange mixture of hope and unease settle in his chest. Humanity united was something people had dreamed about for generations, but it had always seemed impossible, a fantasy reserved for hopeful speeches. It had taken total humiliation, a public banishment in front of the wider galaxy, to finally make it real. And what does this continuance project intend to do with that unity? Daniel asked. Olivia exchanged a glance with Peter before answering. There's something we found years ago, an energy signature near Saturn's rings. At the time, it was dismissed as a sensor glitch, filed away and forgotten. But new analysis suggests it wasn't a glitch at all. It might be the remains of something built long before any of the Council species existed. Daniel's pulse quickened. You're talking about precursor technology. We're talking about the possibility of a power source unlike anything the Council has ever controlled, Olivia said. If we're right, it could change everything about our position in the galaxy. Daniel looked between them, understanding slowly settling in. You want to go after it. We already have a ship ready, Peter said. All we need is your approval as the returning ambassador to authorize a black-budget expedition. Officially, it will not exist. Unofficially, it may be the only chance we have to walk back into that council chamber someday, not as beggars asking for forgiveness, but as equals they cannot ignore. Daniel thought of the Voss delegate's cold voice, the casual cruelty of a species so certain of its own superiority that it never considered humanity might rise to meet it. He thought of the ships being recalled from a dozen systems, of colonies that would now be isolated, of trade routes closed overnight, simply because Earth had grown too fast for older powers to feel comfortable. Do it, Daniel said, quietly, carefully. And Peter, I want to know everything, every step of the way. If we're going to gamble our future on this, I need to understand what we're risking. You'll be the first to know, Peter promised. As the sun set over the coastline behind them, painting the sky in deep orange and violet, Daniel allowed himself a brief moment to imagine a different future. Not one where humanity crawled back to the Council on its knees, but one where it stood on its own, powered by something the galaxy had never seen before. He didn't yet know how dangerous that choice would prove to be. He didn't know about the ancient ruins waiting silently in the dark, or the forces sleeping inside them that no living species fully understood. All he knew, standing there with the weight of an entire world now resting on a single decision, was that Earth would not simply accept its punishment. It would answer it. 3 days later, Daniel sat in a secure briefing room deep beneath the Terran Authority's headquarters, watching as engineers and scientists filed in one by one. Grace sat beside him, quietly reviewing files on a small screen, her brow furrowed with concentration. You've read the preliminary data? Daniel asked her. Most of it, Grace said. It's incomplete, but what they do have is strange. The energy signature isn't consistent with any known celestial phenomenon. It flares in patterns, almost like a heartbeat, then goes silent for months at a time. A heartbeat, Daniel repeated. That's not exactly reassuring. No, Grace agreed. It isn't. Olivia entered the room with a datapad in hand, followed by a younger scientist Daniel hadn't met yet, a sharp-eyed woman named Emma Brooks. Olivia activated the central display, and a rotating model of Saturn's ring system appeared, a small section highlighted in red near one of the outer moons. This is where the signature originates, Olivia explained. The ring debris in that area is denser than it should be, almost as if something large broke apart there long ago and left fragments scattered across a wide radius. Our best theory is that whatever is generating the signal isn't natural. It's the remains of a structure. How old? Daniel asked. Impossible to say precisely, Emma answered. But based on the decay patterns of the surrounding debris, we estimate it predates even the oldest known Council civilization by a significant margin. If our numbers are right, we could be looking at something built before any current species even developed space travel. The room fell silent for a moment as the weight of that statement settled over everyone present. If this is precursor technology, Daniel said slowly, why hasn't the Council already claimed it? They've had centuries of exploration through this region. Because it's hidden, Olivia said. Buried beneath layers of ice and rock, shielded by something we don't fully understand yet. Our scanners only picked it up by accident, and only because we were desperate enough to look in places others considered pointless to search. Daniel exhaled slowly. So we have a narrow window. Something the Council hasn't found yet, and might not find for years, if ever. Exactly, Peter said, entering the room and taking a seat at the head of the table. Which is why speed and secrecy are essential. If word of this reaches Council spies before we're ready, we lose any advantage we might gain. Daniel looked around the table at the faces staring back at him, each carrying a mixture of excitement and fear. He thought about the cost of failure, the political and financial ruin that would follow if this expedition was discovered and condemned as a violation of Council law. He thought about the cost of doing nothing, of allowing Earth to shrink quietly into irrelevance while older powers carved up the galaxy without them. Prepare the ship, Daniel said finally. Choose the crew carefully. I want people who can handle the unexpected and who understand the importance of discretion. Already underway, Peter said. We're calling her the Meridian. She'll be ready to launch within the week. As the meeting ended and the room slowly emptied, Grace lingered behind, watching Daniel study the rotating model of Saturn's rings one last time. Do you think we're making the right choice? She asked quietly. Daniel considered the question carefully before answering. I think we've been given very few choices at all. The Council took away our seat at their table. Now we have to decide whether we accept that, or whether we build a table of our own. Grace nodded slowly, though the uncertainty in her eyes didn't fully fade. Let's hope whatever is out there is worth the risk. Daniel turned toward the door, his thoughts already racing ahead to the days to come. Let's hope it doesn't cost us more than we're willing to pay. Outside, the sky over the authorities' headquarters was clear and calm, filled with the quiet glow of a million distant stars. Somewhere among them, far beyond the reach of any telescope on Earth, something ancient waited in the dark, patient and silent, unaware that a desperate and determined species was about to come looking for it. The Meridian broke atmosphere 7 days later, its hull gleaming under the pale morning light as it climbed away from the launch facility hidden deep within a restricted coastal zone. Inside the command deck, Captain Nathan Cole gripped the edge of his console as the ship shuddered through the final layer of turbulence before slipping into the smooth silence of open space. System stable, announced Charlotte Vale, the ship's navigator, her eyes fixed on the shifting data across her screen. We are clear of Earth's gravity well, setting course for Saturn. Nathan allowed himself a brief breath of relief. This was only the beginning, but every successful step mattered now. The Meridian was not a warship, nor a diplomatic vessel. It was something new, built quickly and quietly, its systems patched together from experimental designs that had never been fully tested under real conditions. If something went wrong out here, there would be no rescue, no backup, and no explanation the Terran Authority could offer without revealing the very secret they were trying to protect. Olivia Marsh sat in the science bay, watching sensor readings scroll past in a steady stream. Beside her, Emma Brooks adjusted a series of calibration settings, her focus unbroken despite the long hours of the launch sequence. How long until we reach the signal's source? Emma asked without looking up. 11 days at current speed, Olivia answered, assuming nothing forces us to slow down. And if something does? Olivia finally looked up, her expression unreadable. Then we adjust. That's all we can do. Back on Earth, Daniel Harper stood in the observation room of the authorities' command center, watching a faint dot representing the Meridian's position slowly move across a massive star chart. Grace Whitfield stood beside him, arms crossed, her attention fixed on the same screen. They're committed now, Grace said quietly. No turning back. There wasn't any turning back the moment we made the decision, Daniel replied. All we can do now is make sure they have everything they need to succeed. Peter Ashford entered the room, his expression tense. Ambassador, we have a problem. Council monitoring stations near the outer trade lanes picked up unusual activity in our system. Nothing confirmed yet, but it's possible they've noticed something unusual about our sudden military reorganization. Daniel's jaw tightened. Do they suspect the expedition? Unclear, Peter admitted. But we can't assume ignorance forever. If they start asking questions, we need answers ready that don't lead back to Saturn. Daniel nodded slowly. Increase our public communications. Emphasize rebuilding efforts, unification progress, anything that gives them a reasonable explanation for our activity. Keep their attention on the surface, not the sky. Understood, Peter said, already turning to relay the order. 11 days later, the meridian slowed as it approached the outer edge of Saturn's ring system, the massive planet looming ahead like a colossal eye watching their approach. Nathan guided the ship carefully through the debris field, weaving between chunks of ice and rock with practiced precision, while Charlotte monitored a growing wall of navigational hazards on her display. We're entering the dense region now, Charlotte reported. Sensor interference is increasing. In the science bay, Olivia watched as the readings on her screen began to spike erratically. The steady heartbeat pattern they had detected from Earth grew louder, more defined, pulsing with an intensity that made the instruments struggle to keep pace. There, Emma said suddenly, pointing to a cluster of data points forming a clear shape within the debris field. That's not random. That's structured. Nathan's voice came over the comm system. Talk to me, Doctor. What are we looking at? Olivia stared at the screen, her breath catching slightly. I think we found it. The meridian slowed to a careful crawl as it approached a massive shape hidden within the ice and rock, only partially visible through the swirling debris. As the ship's outer lights swept across the structure, its true scale became clear. It was enormous, larger than anything Olivia had imagined, its surface marked with strange geometric patterns unlike any architecture humanity had ever encountered. It's not a ship, Olivia said softly, almost to herself. It's a facility, a station, or something like one. Nathan studied the shape through the forward viewport, his expression a mixture of awe and caution. Can we get inside safely? There's an opening on the lower section, Charlotte reported, highlighting a section of the structure on the display. It looks intentional, almost like an entrance. Almost like it's inviting us in, Emma murmured. Nathan glanced back at Olivia. Doctor, this is your call. Do we proceed? Olivia hesitated only a moment before nodding. We came this far. We need to know what's inside. The meridian eased closer, its docking clamps extending toward the ancient structure's opening. As the connection locked into place, a low vibration passed through the ship, subtle but unmistakable, as though the structure itself had acknowledged their arrival. A small team assembled at the airlock, led by Nathan himself, accompanied by Olivia, Emma, and 2 security officers, George Price and Sophie Lowell, both trained for unpredictable environments. As the outer door slid open, the group stepped cautiously into a wide corridor, bathed in a faint, pulsing blue light that seemed to emanate from the walls themselves. Life support is stable, Sophie reported, checking her handheld scanner. Atmosphere is breathable, though the composition is unusual. Stay alert, Nathan said. We don't know what else is in here. They moved deeper into the structure, the corridor widening into a massive chamber, filled with towering columns, arranged in a precise circular pattern. At the center of the room stood a single object, small compared to the scale of the chamber around it, yet radiating an energy so powerful that every instrument on their scanners spiked the moment they entered. Olivia approached slowly, her eyes wide with disbelief. This is it. This is the source. The object resembled a sphere, roughly the size of a human head, suspended in the air, without any visible support, surrounded by a faint shimmering field. Its surface shifted constantly, patterns of light moving across it like liquid fire, trapped just beneath the surface. Doctor, Emma said carefully, readings suggest this core is still active, and still generating power at a scale far beyond anything we've measured before. After all this time, Olivia whispered, it's still alive. Nathan stepped closer, studying the sphere with cautious curiosity. Can we move it safely? I don't know, Olivia admitted. We've never encountered anything like this. If it's unstable, moving it could trigger a reaction we can't predict. We don't have unlimited time, Nathan reminded her. If Council patrols expand their search range, we could lose our window entirely. Olivia took a slow breath, steadying herself. Then we proceed carefully. Emma, prepare the containment field. If we're going to bring this back to Earth, we do it the right way, step by step. As the team worked meticulously to construct a stabilizing field around the ancient core, none of them noticed the faint shift in the pulsing light throughout the chamber, a subtle change in rhythm, as though the structure itself was beginning to respond to their presence in ways they did not yet understand. Hours later, with the core secured within a specially designed containment unit, the team began their careful journey back toward the meridian. As they passed through the final corridor leading to the airlock, the walls around them flickered briefly, casting strange shadows that seemed to move independently of the source. Sophie paused, glancing nervously at the walls. Did anyone else see that? See what? George asked. Nothing, Sophie said, shaking her head. Just my imagination. But as the team boarded the meridian and the airlock sealed behind them, Olivia couldn't shake the feeling that something ancient and unseen had just noticed their arrival, and now, quietly, was beginning to notice their departure as well. Back on the command deck, Nathan turned to the science bay comm. Dr. Marsh, is the core secure? Secure and stable, Olivia confirmed, though her voice carried a note of uncertainty she couldn't quite explain. Then let's go home, Nathan said. Charlotte, set course back to Earth. Course set, Charlotte replied. Preparing for departure. As the meridian pulled away from the ancient structure, its lights fading slowly into the darkness behind them, none of the crew realized that their discovery had already been noticed by more than just the silent facility they left behind. Far beyond the edge of the solar system, a council listening post had detected the faint but unmistakable ripple caused by the sudden activation of a power source, unlike anything recorded in their databases. The report was flagged immediately, sent up the chain of command with a single urgent notation attached. Unknown energy signature. Origin confirmed within Terran-controlled space. Classification unknown. Recommend immediate investigation. Somewhere far from Earth, in a chamber far more sophisticated than the one the Meridian's crew had just left behind, Council officials began to take notice of a species they had only recently dismissed as too small and too insignificant to worry about. That assumption was about to change. The moment the Meridian docked at the hidden research facility outside the coastal city, a small army of scientists and engineers descended upon the ship, eager to catch even a glimpse of what the crew had brought home. Daniel Harper arrived within the hour, moving quickly through security checkpoints until he reached the containment bay where the ancient core now rested inside a reinforced chamber, humming softly with barely restrained energy. Ambassador, Olivia Marsh greeted him, her exhaustion from the journey visible, despite her efforts to appear composed. I want to show you something before the full analysis begins. She led him to a viewing window overlooking the containment chamber. Inside, the sphere floated silently, its surface shifting with slow, deliberate patterns of light. It's beautiful, Daniel said quietly. It's also unpredictable, Olivia added. During transport, we recorded several unexplained fluctuations, small spikes in output that don't correspond to anything we did. It's almost as if the core is aware. Daniel frowned. Aware how? I don't know yet, Olivia admitted. But every time our scanners probe too deeply, the readings shift, almost like it's reacting to being studied. Peter Ashford joined them, holding a datapad filled with preliminary reports. The engineering teams are already drafting theoretical designs based on partial readings. If even a fraction of the projected output is accurate, this could redefine every system we currently rely on. Propulsion, defense, even citywide power grids. That's the promise, Daniel said. What's the risk? Peter hesitated. Early tests on smaller fragments extracted from the containment field have shown instability. 2 of our engineers were injured yesterday during a controlled test that didn't stay controlled for long. Daniel's expression darkened. How badly? They'll recover, Peter said. But it's a warning. This power source doesn't behave like anything we've built before. It doesn't follow known rules. Olivia nodded in agreement. We need more time before we attempt anything large-scale. Rushing this could be catastrophic. Time is something we may not have, Daniel said. Peter mentioned unusual council activity near our monitoring stations. If they've detected even a fraction of what we've found, they'll move quickly to investigate. And if they discover what we've done, the consequences could be severe. The tension in the room deepened as everyone absorbed the weight of that possibility. Earth had already been banished once for far smaller offenses. Recovering a precursor artifact from unclaimed territory, without council approval, would almost certainly be viewed as a far greater violation. Over the following weeks, the research into the core accelerated under intense secrecy. Teams worked around the clock, testing small applications of the extracted energy in isolated environments far from populated areas. Early successes were promising. A prototype engine powered by a minuscule fragment of the core's energy produced output levels far beyond anything achieved with existing technology. But with every success came new complications. In one of the underground testing facilities, Nathan Cole watched nervously as engineers prepared for another controlled test. Emma Brooks stood beside the main console, her fingers steady despite the obvious tension in the room. "Power levels rising," Emma reported. "Containment field holding steady." "Increase output by 5%, instructed the lead engineer, a calm but focused man named Edward Lang. Emma adjusted the controls carefully. The prototype engine, housed within a reinforced chamber, began to glow faintly, its hum rising in pitch as energy flowed through newly designed conduits. "Steady," Edward said. "Hold it there." For a moment everything remained stable. Then, without warning, one of the readings spiked violently. "Containment fluctuation," Emma shouted. "Power surge detected." "Shut it down," Edward ordered. Emma's hands moved quickly across the console, but the system resisted her commands, the surge growing faster than the safety protocols could compensate for. A bright flash lit the chamber, followed by a deep shudder that rattled the entire facility. When the emergency systems finally regained control and the chaos settled, the room was left in stunned silence. The prototype engine had been destroyed, its casing melted beyond recognition, though thankfully the reinforced containment walls had prevented any wider damage. "Everyone all right?" Nathan asked, scanning the room. Shaken nods answered him from around the chamber. Edward exhaled slowly, staring at the ruined remains of the engine. "We need better safeguards before we attempt this again. This power doesn't just resist control. Seems to actively fight against limitation." Word of the incident reached Daniel within the hour. He arrived at the facility to find Olivia already reviewing the failure data, her expression grim. "Another setback," Daniel said. "A serious one," Olivia replied. "The energy behaves almost like a living current, resisting containment the more we try to restrict its flow. If we don't figure out how to work with it instead of against it, every attempt at large-scale application risks similar failures, or worse. What do you suggest?" Olivia hesitated before answering. "I think we need to change our approach entirely. Instead of trying to force this energy into systems built for conventional power, we may need to design new systems specifically shaped around its nature. That means starting over on much of our engineering framework." Daniel absorbed the implications of that statement. Starting over meant more time, and time was quickly becoming their most valuable and most limited resource. Meanwhile, far beyond Earth's system, Council forces had grown increasingly suspicious of the strange energy readings first detected weeks earlier. A senior officer within the Voss Assembly's monitoring division, a sharp and calculating figure named Commander Veth, reviewed the latest reports with growing concern. "These readings originate from within Terran-controlled space," Veth said to the officers gathered around him. "Yet nothing in their known technology matches this signature. Could it be a natural phenomenon?" one officer asked. "Unlikely," Veth replied. "The pattern is too consistent, too deliberate. This is artificial in origin." Another officer stepped forward, hesitant but determined to voice his concern. "If the humans have discovered something we haven't, that could represent a significant risk. They were already deemed unpredictable enough to warrant expulsion from the Council." Veth's expression hardened. "Then we will need to determine exactly what they've found, and whether it poses a threat that requires immediate action." He turned toward the star chart displayed on the wall, his gaze fixed on the small, distant marker representing the Sol system. "Prepare a reconnaissance fleet," Veth ordered, quietly. "I want eyes on that system before anyone else in the Council even realizes there's something worth investigating." Back on Earth, the pressure to stabilize the ancient power source only intensified as reports of increased Council surveillance activity trickled in through the authorities' limited intelligence network. Grace Whitfield worked tirelessly alongside Daniel, coordinating between political leadership and the scientific teams, struggling to make sense of their extraordinary discovery. "We need a breakthrough," Grace said during one of their late-night strategy sessions. "If the Council sends a fleet before we're ready to defend what we've built, everything we've worked for could be lost in a single confrontation." "Olivia believes a new approach to containment could solve the instability issues," Daniel said. "But it requires resources we don't currently have readily available." "Then we find those resources," Grace said firmly. "Whatever it takes." Daniel nodded, though the weight of the situation pressed heavily on him. Humanity had gambled everything on the hope that this ancient power could restore their place in the galaxy. Yet with every failed test and every rumor of Council suspicion, that hope felt increasingly fragile. Days later, a breakthrough finally emerged. Working through countless failed simulations, Olivia's team discovered that the core responded not to forceful control, but to carefully synchronized energy patterns, designed to work in harmony with its natural rhythm. It was less like operating a machine, and more like learning to communicate with something entirely new. "It's responding," Emma said excitedly, during a private test late one evening, watching as the small fragment of the core stabilized within a newly designed containment field. "The fluctuations are smoothing out." Olivia studied the readings carefully, a rare smile forming on her tired face. "We're not forcing it anymore. We're working with it." Nathan, watching from nearby, allowed himself a small measure of relief. "Does this mean we can move forward with larger-scale applications?" "Cautiously," Olivia said. "But yes, I believe we finally understand how to harness this safely." News of the breakthrough spread quickly through the authorities' leadership, offering a renewed sense of hope after weeks of uncertainty and setbacks. Daniel called an emergency meeting to discuss the next phase of their plan, gathering key figures from both the scientific and military divisions. "With stable containment finally within reach," Peter said during the meeting, "we can begin integrating this energy source into critical defense systems. If the Council does send a fleet, we need to be prepared to demonstrate strength, not vulnerability." "We're not looking to provoke a conflict," Daniel reminded him. "Our goal is deterrence, not aggression." "Understood," Peter said. "But, given what we now know about Council interest in this region, preparation isn't optional anymore. It's necessary." As the meeting continued late into the night, plans began to take shape for a new generation of Terran technology. One built not on borrowed knowledge from older civilizations, but on an entirely new foundation discovered through humanity's own persistence and ingenuity. Yet even as optimism grew within the authorities' leadership, Olivia couldn't fully shake the strange feeling that had followed her since their first encounter with the ancient structure near Saturn's rings. The core, now safely contained and finally cooperating with their systems, still occasionally displayed patterns that defied explanation, subtle pulses of activity that seemed to occur without any external trigger. Late one night, working alone in the containment lab, Olivia noticed the core's light shifting in an unfamiliar rhythm, slow and deliberate, almost like a message waiting to be understood. She stared at the pattern for a long moment, an uneasy chill settling over her. "What are you trying to tell us?" she whispered softly, though no answer came, only the quiet hum of energy, pulsing steadily within its containment field, patient and ancient, waiting for humanity to catch up to whatever secrets it still held. Far above, in the silent darkness beyond Earth's orbit, the first scout ships of the Council's reconnaissance fleet had already begun their slow, careful approach toward the edge of the Sol system, unaware that the world they were preparing to investigate had already begun preparing for their arrival. Alarms echoed through the deep space monitoring station on the edge of the Sol system, as Sophie Lowell stared at the sudden cluster of unidentified signals appearing on her display. She had been assigned to the outer watch post for months, monitoring quiet stretches of empty space, and nothing had prepared her for the sight now unfolding before her. "Command, this is Outer Watch," Sophie said urgently into her comm. "I'm reading multiple unidentified contacts approaching from outside our system boundary. Formation pattern suggests military configuration." Within moments, the authorities' central command center erupted into controlled chaos. Daniel Harper was pulled from a strategy meeting and rushed to the command deck, where Peter Ashford was already reviewing incoming data with a tense expression. Talk to me, Daniel said as he entered. Council reconnaissance fleet, Peter said grimly. At least a dozen ships, moving cautiously toward the outer edge of our system. They haven't made contact yet, but their trajectory suggests they're heading straight for us. Daniel's stomach tightened. They know. We can't be certain of that yet, Peter said. But given the timing, it seems unlikely to be a coincidence. Grace Whitfield joined them moments later, her expression as tense as everyone else's. If this is a response to the energy readings from our testing, they may already suspect we've recovered something significant. What are our options? Daniel asked. Peter hesitated before answering. Our new defense systems aren't fully operational yet. We have partial integration across select fleet vessels, but nothing close to a full deployment. If they intend to engage, we're not ready. And if we show weakness, Grace said quietly, they may see it as confirmation that punishing us further would carry little risk. Daniel took a slow breath, steadying his thoughts. Then we don't show weakness. We show exactly enough strength to make them think twice, without giving away everything we've built. Peter nodded, though his uncertainty was clear. That's a dangerous line to walk. It's the only line we have, Daniel said. As the Council fleet continued its slow approach, Terran forces scrambled to prepare a controlled response. Nathan Cole was recalled to active duty, placed in command of a newly outfitted vessel, equipped with an early version of the core-powered defense systems, still unstable, but functional enough for limited use. Systems check complete, Charlotte Vale reported from the navigation station as Nathan settled into the command chair. Power output steady, though still well below theoretical maximum. It doesn't need to be at maximum, Nathan said. It just needs to work. Olivia Marsh, monitoring the situation from a secondary station, kept a close eye on the core's readings. If this ship experiences the same kind of surge we saw during earlier tests, it could be catastrophic in the middle of a confrontation. Then let's hope it doesn't come to that, Nathan replied. The Terran fleet, though still modest in size compared to typical Council forces, moved into position at the edge of the system, forming a defensive line designed more to project confidence than to threaten aggression. Daniel remained in constant contact from the command center, watching tensely as the two fleets slowly closed the distance between them. They're hailing us, Charlotte reported. Put it through, Nathan said. The image of Commander Veth appeared on the main display, his expression calm but calculating. Terran vessel, you are entering a sensitive investigation zone. Explain the unusual energy activity detected within your system. Nathan exchanged a brief glance with Olivia before answering carefully. This is Terran Defense Command. Our system remains sovereign territory. We are not obligated to explain internal research activities to external parties. Veth's expression darkened slightly. Given your recent expulsion from the Council, your claim to sovereignty is considerably weaker than you seem to believe. And yet, Nathan replied evenly, we remain fully capable of defending what belongs to us. A tense silence followed as both sides waited, neither willing to make the first aggressive move. Aboard the command center on Earth, Daniel watched the exchange with his jaw tightly clenched, fully aware that a single miscalculation could ignite a conflict neither side was prepared to fully commit to. Dr. Marsh, Veth said finally, addressing Olivia directly, apparently having been briefed on her identity from earlier surveillance reports. We are aware of your involvement in recent expeditions beyond your system boundaries. If your people have recovered materials belonging to a protected precursor site, that constitutes a serious violation of Council law. Olivia's heart pounded, but she kept her voice steady. We have recovered nothing that was under active Council protection or claim. If your Council failed to secure or even acknowledge that site's existence, that failure does not transfer ownership to you after the fact. Veth studied her carefully through the display, clearly weighing his next move. You are treading a dangerous path, Doctor, one that could easily be interpreted as open provocation. We're not looking for conflict, Daniel finally interjected, his voice calm but firm as he joined the transmission. We are simply no longer willing to remain passive while decisions about our future are made entirely without our input. Veth's gaze shifted toward Daniel, recognition flickering across his expression. Ambassador Harper, I should have expected you to be involved in this. Commander Veth, Daniel replied, Earth has no interest in escalating this situation, but we will not allow further intrusion into our sovereign space without appropriate justification. For a long, tense moment, neither side spoke. Then, unexpectedly, one of the smaller Terran support vessels experienced a sudden and highly visible surge of power, its outer hull glowing briefly with an intense pulse of energy before stabilizing just as quickly. The display, though unintentional, created an unmistakable impression of controlled and formidable strength. Veth's eyes narrowed slightly as he studied the sudden display. "Interesting," he said slowly. "It appears your capabilities may exceed our previous assessments." Nathan, quick to seize the opportunity created by the accidental display, spoke with calm confidence. "Then perhaps it would be wise to reconsider any assumptions about our vulnerability." Veth remained silent for a long moment, clearly recalculating the risks involved in pressing the confrontation further. Finally he spoke again, his tone measured but noticeably less aggressive than before. "We will withdraw for now, pending further review. But make no mistake, Ambassador, this matter is far from concluded." The transmission ended, and the Council fleet began a slow, deliberate retreat from the edge of the system. Aboard the command center, a wave of cautious relief spread through the room, though Daniel remained fully aware that the danger had only been delayed, not eliminated. "They're pulling back," Charlotte confirmed. Nathan exhaled slowly, releasing tension he hadn't realized he was holding. "That was closer than I'd like." "Agreed," Olivia said quietly, still watching the readings from the ship that had unintentionally revealed their growing capabilities. "We need better control before something like that happens again, especially if we don't intend for it to." Back on Earth, Daniel allowed himself only a brief moment of relief before turning to Peter and Grace, both still watching the fading Council fleet on the display. "That bought us time," Daniel said. "Not peace. Time." "Time to do what?" Grace asked. "Time to finish what we started," Daniel replied. "If the Council sees us as a threat now, we need to make sure that threat is one they respect, not one they feel compelled to eliminate." Peter nodded slowly. "Then we accelerate every part of the program: defense integration, energy stabilization, fleet modernization. All of it." "All of it," Daniel confirmed, "because next time, they won't retreat so easily." As night fell over the authorities' headquarters, Daniel stood once again at the observation window, watching the stars above with a mixture of determination and quiet unease. Earth had taken its first true step out of the shadow of its banishment, not through apology or compromise, but through a demonstration of strength few had believed possible only months earlier. Yet as he stood there, watching the same stars that had once represented humanity's hope for peaceful cooperation among the wider galaxy, Daniel understood clearly that the path ahead would not be an easy one. The Council would not simply accept this newfound defiance without further challenge. And somewhere out among those same stars, plans were already being made to respond to a species that had, against all expectations, refused to remain quietly contained. 6 months passed following the tense standoff at the edge of the Sol system, and in that time, the unified Terran Authority worked with relentless focus to transform a moment of narrowly avoided disaster into a foundation for lasting strength. Daniel Harper stood once again in the same observation room where he had first learned of Earth's expulsion from the Council, though the world outside the window had changed dramatically since that day. Fleets that had once consisted of scattered, aging vessels now moved in coordinated formations powered by stabilized fragments of the ancient core's energy. Cities across the globe had quietly begun integrating early applications of the new technology into infrastructure, improving efficiency in ways that had once seemed impossible. And though secrecy still shrouded much of the program's true scale, whispers of Earth's growing capability had clearly begun to spread throughout Council space. "Ambassador," Grace Whitfield said, entering the room with a datapad in hand. "The Council has formally requested a diplomatic meeting. They want an explanation for the events 6 months ago, and clarification on our current technological standing." Daniel turned from the window. "Have they specified terms?" "Neutral ground," Grace said. "A newly constructed outpost station along one of the older trade routes. They've agreed to send a delegation, provided we do the same." Daniel considered the request carefully. This wasn't a summons to another humiliating tribunal. It was something different, an acknowledgement, however reluctant, that Earth could no longer be dismissed as easily as before. "Prepare a delegation," Daniel said. "But this time, we're not going as supplicants asking to be readmitted. We're going as representatives of an independent power, negotiating on our own terms." Grace allowed herself a small, cautious smile. "That's a very different tone than the one you carried into the last council chamber." "A great deal has changed since then," Daniel replied. Preparations for the meeting moved quickly. Nathan Cole was assigned to lead the small honor escort accompanying the diplomatic delegation, while Olivia Marsh and Emma Brooks were tasked with preparing a controlled demonstration of stabilized core technology, carefully calibrated to showcase strength without revealing the full extent of Earth's capabilities. "We need to walk a careful line," Olivia explained during a final briefing before departure. "Enough to earn respect, but not so much that we appear as an immediate threat requiring elimination." "A difficult balance," Nathan said. "The only balance that matters right now," Olivia replied. As the delegation's ship prepared for departure, Daniel took a final moment to review updated reports on the broader political landscape within the Council. Not all member species viewed Earth's rise with hostility. Some, particularly smaller or newer members who had experienced similar dismissiveness from older powers, appeared cautiously intrigued by the possibility of an emerging ally capable of standing up to long-established authority. Among those was a young diplomat named Victor Holt, technically human by heritage but raised largely among a smaller allied species, still holding limited council standing. Victor had reached out quietly in the weeks leading up to the meeting, offering insight into the shifting political currents within the chamber. "There's more uncertainty among the council than you might expect," Victor explained during a private communication with Daniel shortly before departure. "Your banishment was meant to serve as a warning to other rising species. Instead, it may end up demonstrating the opposite lesson entirely." "And what lesson is that?" Daniel asked. "That punishment without understanding often creates exactly the kind of resilience it was meant to prevent," Victor said. "Many are watching closely to see what happens next. Your response to this meeting could shape far more than Earth's future alone." Daniel absorbed those words carefully as the delegation's ship finally launched, carrying with it not only Earth's hopes for a stronger position among the stars, but also the weight of an uncertain and closely watched precedent. The neutral outpost station orbited quietly within a sparsely populated system, its structure a blend of architectural styles representing dozens of different species who had contributed to its construction over the years. As the Terran delegation's ship docked, Daniel felt a familiar tension settle over him, though this time it was mixed with a quiet confidence he hadn't carried during his last visit to Council territory. Commander Veth was present among the Council delegation, standing alongside several senior representatives, including the same silver-skinned Voss delegate who had spoken so dismissively to Daniel months earlier during Earth's original banishment. "Ambassador Harper," Veth greeted him with a measured nod. "It seems your species continues to defy expectations. We've simply learned to stop waiting for permission to grow," Daniel replied evenly. The meeting convened within a large circular chamber, delegates from multiple species seated around a central platform where a holographic display awaited activation. Daniel took his place at the podium, aware of dozens of watchful eyes studying him closely, some curious, others clearly wary. "Ambassador Harper," began the presiding council representative, an elder figure from a species known for their careful, deliberate speech patterns. "You have been summoned to explain recent developments within your territory, particularly concerning unauthorized activity near a designated precursor site, and subsequent displays of advanced military capability." Daniel activated the holographic display, presenting a carefully prepared overview of Earth's recent technological progress, deliberately omitting sensitive details regarding the full scope of the core's power and its true origin. "Following our expulsion from this council," Daniel began, "Earth was left without access to shared trade routes, technological cooperation, or diplomatic protection. Rather than accept a diminished and dependent future, our people chose instead to pursue independent advancement. What you witnessed near our system boundary was simply the natural result of that determination." The Voss delegate leaned forward slightly, his expression skeptical. "Independent advancement of this scale within such a short time frame strains credibility, Ambassador," Perhaps, Daniel replied calmly, but underestimating our capability has already proven costly once. I would advise against repeating that mistake. A ripple of quiet murmurs passed through the chamber. Veth studied Daniel closely before speaking again. What is it you seek from this meeting, Ambassador? Reinstatement to full council membership? Daniel paused deliberately before answering, allowing the weight of his response to settle fully before he spoke. No, Commander. We are not here seeking reinstatement. We are here to establish a new relationship, one built on mutual respect between equals, rather than dependency on a council that abandoned us the moment we became inconvenient. The chamber fell into a tense silence. The presiding representative studied Daniel carefully, clearly weighing the implications of his statement. You propose an entirely new diplomatic framework, separate from traditional council membership? I propose exactly that, Daniel confirmed. Earth will maintain its own sovereignty, its own defense capabilities, and its own path forward. We remain open to trade, cooperation, and peaceful coexistence with any species willing to engage with us honestly and respectfully, but we will no longer accept a position of subservience within a system that has already demonstrated its willingness to discard us the moment it suited their interests. Whispers spread quickly among the gathered delegates, some clearly uneasy, others intrigued by the boldness of Earth's new position. Victor Holt, seated among a group of smaller allied species, exchanged a quiet, knowing glance with Daniel from across the chamber. The presiding representative finally spoke again, his tone carefully neutral. This council will require time to fully consider the implications of your proposal, Ambassador. Such a significant shift cannot be decided within a single session. Take the time you need, Daniel replied. Earth is no longer in a position where our future depends entirely on this council's approval. As the meeting concluded, delegates slowly filed out of the chamber, quiet conversations rippling through the crowd, as they processed the unprecedented turn events had taken. Veth approached Daniel briefly before departing, his expression carrying a rare hint of genuine respect beneath his usual composed exterior. You've changed the nature of this conversation entirely, Ambassador, Veth said. Whether that proves beneficial or dangerous for your people remains to be seen. That risk, Daniel replied, belongs to us now, not to this council. Veth offered a slight nod before turning to leave, his silence carrying more weight than any further words could have provided. As Daniel and his delegation prepared to depart the outpost station, Grace approached him quietly, her expression thoughtful. Do you think they'll accept our terms? I don't know, Daniel admitted, but for the first time since our banishment, we're the ones setting the terms of the conversation, not simply reacting to whatever decisions are made for us. Back aboard their ship as it prepared for the journey home, Olivia Marsh reviewed final reports from the demonstration, her expression thoughtful. The core's stability continues to hold steady, she reported. Whatever adjustments we made seem to be working. Good, Daniel said. Because our future is going to depend on that stability more than ever now. As the ship pulled away from the outpost station, Earth's small but determined delegation carried with them not a guarantee of safety, nor a clear promise of acceptance, but something far more valuable than either. They carried the beginning of a new identity, one no longer defined by dependence on older powers, but by the resilience and ingenuity that had allowed humanity to transform a moment of humiliation into an opportunity for genuine strength. Months later, as Earth's fleets continued to grow steadily stronger, and its cities thrived under the careful integration of newly stabilized technology, Daniel stood once more at the familiar observation window overlooking the authorities' headquarters. The stars above seemed somehow different now, no longer distant symbols of exclusion, but a vast and open frontier, waiting for a species finally ready to claim its place among them. Grace joined him quietly, watching the same stars in comfortable silence for a long moment before speaking. It's strange, she said. We were banished for being too ambitious, too unpredictable, and now, that same ambition may be exactly what earns us a lasting place in this galaxy. Daniel allowed himself a small, genuine smile. Sometimes the very thing that gets you cast out is the thing that eventually makes you impossible to ignore. As the last light of sunset faded over the horizon, giving way to a clear night sky filled with countless stars, Earth stood not as a wounded and diminished world seeking forgiveness, but as a rising power, forged through hardship determination, and an unshakable will to shape its own future among the stars. And far beyond the edge of the solar system, throughout the wider expanse of council space, word continued to spread of a small, defiant world that had refused to accept the limits others had tried to place upon it. A world now regarded not with dismissive pity, but with cautious, undeniable respect.